You already know mobile game ads lie. The puzzle that isn't in the game. The pin you will never pull. The dramatic rescue that turns out to be another match 3 board. Everyone knows. Nobody cares. It's the industry's oldest joke. In April of 2026, a federal jury in New York looked at one of these companies and stopped laughing. The real lie was never in the ads. It was inside the game. Millions of players were told they were competing against real people. For real money. According to that jury, many of them were playing against machines. Machines built to decide who wins and who keeps paying. This is the story of the biggest false advertising verdict in American history. $420 million. And it starts with a game of solitaire. Mobile gaming runs on a simple bargain. The ads exaggerate. The games deliver something smaller. Billions of dollars flow anyway. For years, that was considered the whole scandal. Fake gameplay, misleading trailers, a harmless hustle at the edge of a massive industry. This video is about the moment that bargain broke. You're going to see how the deception migrated from the advertisement into the product itself. How a company that promised, quote, totally fair and skill-based competition ended up in a Manhattan courtroom. What would later turn up in its internal messages. And why the verdict now hangs over an entire industry, including the AI machine that builds and targets these ads in the first place. Once you see how the game was allegedly rigged, you'll never look at a play real people, win real cash ad the same way again. None of this part is new. In 2020, the United Kingdom's Advertising Standards Authority banned ads from Playrix, the maker of Homescapes and Gardenscapes. The ruling: the ads were misleading. Players had to grind through hours of unrelated puzzles to reach anything resembling what the ads showed. The punishment barely mattered. The ads worked, so the industry doubled down. By the mid-2020s, fake creatives weren't a trick anymore, they were a business model. Take Kingshot, a 2025 title that ran ads built on reskin footage of entirely different games and still pulled in 10 million downloads and $35 million in a single quarter. Then artificial intelligence supercharged the pipeline. Ad networks began filling with machine-generated creatives, deep-faked voices, gameplay mechanics that were never designed by anyone, hallucinated by the model that made the ad. Why does this economy exist at all? The mobile market is saturated. Almost everyone who will ever download a Match 3 game already has one. Getting a new player costs more every year. In that world, the ad doesn't describe the product. The ad is the product. Whatever gets the install wins. For a decade, this was treated as the industry's original sin. Annoying, cynical, but ultimately harmless. You lost 30 seconds and some disk space. Then one company allegedly took the same logic and moved it somewhere much darker. Not the promise of what the game looks like. The promise of who you're playing against. March 2023. San Francisco. The Game Developers Conference. An executive named Casey Chafkin is working the floor when he starts hearing things about a competitor's games. Things that don't add up. This is where the story everyone knows, the one about lying advertisements, falls apart. What Chafkin was about to uncover wasn't in an advertisement at all. His discovery only makes sense once you understand the business he was in. It's called real money skill gaming. Simple games like solitaire, bingo, and bubble shooters, where players pay an entry fee, compete against other people, and the best score takes the cash. Legally, this is not gambling, as long as skill decides the outcome and your opponents are real. Chafkin's company, Skillz, helped pioneer the model. Founded in 2012, it went public and raised close to $2 billion. Then its stock collapsed to a tiny fraction of its peak, and Wall Street wrote the whole category off as a failed experiment. As Skillz struggled, a rival was exploding: Papaya Gaming, an Israeli studio behind Solitaire Cash, Bubble Cash, and Bingo Cash. Its marketing promise was everywhere, and it was beautiful in its simplicity. Tournaments described as, quote, totally fair and skill-based. Real people, same skill level. May the best player win. By 2024, Papaya claimed more than 20 million downloads and 1 million daily players, 95% of them in the United States. Its ads featured famous ESPN personalities: Stephen A. Smith, one of the most recognizable faces in American sports media, appeared in Solitaire Cash advertising. The money, the entry fees, and the prize pools were all real. Players eventually noticed something strange, though. They'd win, and then suddenly hit a wall of opponents who never seemed to miss. Reddit threads and App Store reviews filled with the same suspicion. Am I even playing a human? Papaya answered many of those comments. According to later court filings, it neither confirmed nor denied. That silence held for years, until the company that had lost everything to Papaya's rise decided to find out what was behind it. March 4th, 2024. Skillz files suit in the Southern District of New York. The claim sounds almost paranoid. Papaya's games, it alleges, are not human versus human at all. Hidden inside the cash tournaments are computer-controlled bots, which would mean the players aren't competing against each other. They're competing against the house. Skillz CEO, Andrew Paradise, put it bluntly, it's worse than gambling. It's rigged gambling. Papaya's first defense was technical and revealing. It argued it had never expressly stated that every opponent was human. The court agreed that no single sentence said so outright, but let the case proceed anyway because the marketing words like players, individuals, fair skill-based matches could imply exactly that to any reasonable person. Suddenly, the entire lawsuit looked different. The whole dispute came down to a promise so basic that no one thought it needed to be written down. When a game says you're playing people, you assume people. Then came discovery. Lawyers pulled Papaya's internal communications, and according to the evidence later presented at trial, those messages described something with an almost clinical name: tailored sessions. Sessions where outcomes were allegedly predetermined. Win too much and the system could feed you losses. Lose too often, get discouraged, think about quitting, and it could let you win just enough to keep you depositing. Not a bug. Not matchmaking gone wrong. A design, and the jury later found it amounted to shaping results while telling 20 million players the game was fair. And Papaya would eventually admit that the bots were real, that it had used them up until November 2023, when it says the practice stopped. But by then, the fight was no longer about whether the bots existed. It was about the promise Papaya had made while they did. Under New York law, that promise carried a second, heavier implication. If a hidden, house-controlled bot decides outcomes, then skill no longer predominates. The game stops being a skill contest and starts looking like illegal gambling, with the operator as the casino. The stakes were no longer one lawsuit between rivals. They were the legality of the entire category. The trial landed in the spring of 2026 in a Manhattan federal courtroom. Skillz walked the jury through the tailored sessions, the bots, the celebrity-fronted ads promising fair competition, and the sheer scale of the deception. Papaya had advertised $6.7 billion in player winnings. Skillz claimed $4.7 billion of that, the overwhelming majority, had gone to games where bots, not humans, took the prize. Papaya denied every allegation and fought each claim throughout the trial. But on April 23, 2026, the jury returned with an answer. Liable on every count, for $120 million in actual damages. The largest false advertising award under the Lanham Act in the history of the United States. The jury wasn't finished either. It attached an advisory finding that Papaya should also surrender profits, with figures on the table reaching $719 million. The final number rests with the judge. One important caution: this channel deals in facts, not victory laps. Papaya says it respects the jury but disagrees with the outcome, and it's seeking further review, including a new trial. The verdict stands. So does the headline figure. But this fight isn't over, and the final bill could still change. One conclusion, though, doesn't move. A jury of ordinary people examined the inside of a modern mobile game empire and decided that its most fundamental promise was false. Not the graphics, not the difficulty, the opponent. For $120 million isn't a fine for exaggeration. It's a price tag on a specific kind of lie, the kind you can't detect no matter how careful you are. You can spot a fake gameplay trailer in 10 seconds. You can't spot a bot engineered to look exactly like you. That's why the verdict terrified an industry that had spent a decade shrugging at deceptive ads. Lawyers immediately understood what the jury had just built: a roadmap. If undisclosed bots turn a skill game into rigged gambling, every real money gaming app in America now has a target on its back. Class action firms took notes. App stores and payment processors started asking questions. More importantly, though, that's still not the worst part. What this says about everything around the games is worse. Step back for a moment, and Papaya stops looking like one bad actor. It starts looking like a symptom. The same months that produced this verdict produced a wave of hard questions about the machinery of mobile advertising itself. Take AppLovin, one of the most powerful ad engines in mobile gaming, and one of the great AI success stories of the decade. Its stock rode the artificial intelligence boom to a valuation in the hundreds of billions. Then a series of short seller reports alleged that part of its AI-powered edge came from improperly harvesting user data from platforms like Meta and Google. In October 2025, Bloomberg reported that the Securities and Exchange Commission had opened an investigation into the company's data practices. The stock dropped 14% in a day. To be clear, these are allegations. AppLovin categorically denies wrongdoing. No charges have been filed, and it remains a hugely profitable company. What's on trial in the court of public opinion isn't whether the AI works. It's whether anyone actually knows how. Regulators have noticed the pattern. Since late 2024, the Federal Trade Commission has run a sweep called Operation AI Comply, punishing companies that dress up products in artificial intelligence claims they can't back. An $18 million judgment here, a $17 million settlement there. The agency's own framing is blunt. There is no AI exemption from the law. Even the ads themselves are losing the presumption of reality. New York has passed a law requiring disclosure when AI-generated synthetic performers appear in advertising, in effect from June 9, 2026. The games themselves didn't collapse, interestingly enough. The publishers are alive, and most are printing money. What's collapsing is quieter and harder to rebuild. The assumption that anything in this ecosystem, the ad, the opponent, the win, is what it claims to be. Skillz isn't stopping either. It has already filed suit against Voodoo, another gaming giant, alleging, again, bots and rigged tournaments. Voodoo hasn't been found liable of anything, and those claims are unproven, for now. But the roadmap exists, the precedent exists, and somewhere in the App Store on your phone right now, there are hundreds of games promising you real opponents and fair fights, built by companies that watch this verdict very, very closely. Next time an ad promises you real people, remember what a New York jury decided that promise was worth. $420 million. The only question left is which game gets caught next.